So that initial drawing is just something that helped me in the beginning to figure out where I want to lay out my initial boxes for the wireframe. And then if that's good, then the next thing I'll do is I'll create a new layer, and then I'll go to that initial layer that I drew on, and I'll start to fade out the opacity. And then after you do that, what you can do is you can go into your shape tool. So above the hand in your toolbar, you have this little hand here. You can click on that circle, and then go into your rectangle tool. And with this, I want to go up in your control bar on top. Make sure your fill is set to none. So the way you do that is you go into fill, and you click on this diagonal. So now it's set to none. And then you go into your stroke, and make sure that it is set to black. And then you also have a point size that's next to that. So I'll increase the point size. Maybe make it, that's fine, like around 6 pixels. And now I'll start to drag out boxes. Now here I initially turned off the snapping, so maybe I want to turn it back on now when I drag these boxes. Because the boxes now that I drag out are going to snap to my guides. So that's the going to be the banner on top. Now every time you drag a box out, it's going to create a new layer, which is fine. I'll drag this one for the side box. I have this main part of the page here, and then I have a box down below for my footer. And then I think I put a smaller box within this for like a nav bar, so maybe margin of like 20 pixels. So this is set to 1316, so 12, 16 pixels for that guide for this nav bar. And then I can drag out this, and this, let's say this is my nav, some sort of nav bar. So there's my wireframe. So that's my initial wireframe. And then the next thing I might want to do is start to add information inside these boxes so I know exactly what the boxes are for. So this is where you can start to actually add tags. So I'll use my text tool. I'll go to T for the text tool. This main box, I'll call this one, let's say, main. Okay, so that's my main section. This box on top, let's say, let's call this one header. Just kind of make it a little neater. This box over here, I'm going to call it an aside. So this is an actual tag. An aside is basically a sidebar that contains information. It's not the most important information on the web page, but it could be like tips or facts or, you know, kind of info nuggets, extra bits of information. And then down below, I'll add my what's called a footer. So there's an actual tag that's a footer tag. So I'm going to add this in my footer. And then this bar within the header, that's my nav bar. So I will add, and I have to make that a smaller point size as well, since I have little space. So I'm going to actually decrease the point size. So this is going to be called nav bar. Get a little bit bigger. And then once I have this set up, this is my wireframe. I'm going to go back to that initial sketch, and I'm just going to turn it off. I don't need that anymore. So the idea behind showing you an initial sketch is that you can just basically create your wireframes on anything, you know, like a napkin, piece of paper, and then take a picture of it, and then import it into Photoshop, scan it directly into Photoshop. So you can do it different ways. You don't have to use. All right, I just want to fix this, but it's easy to reverse it. They've been looking at me for too long. Okay. So that's basically the nav bar, right? I'm sorry, the wireframe. And I have header on the side, main. Let's say as I continue to work on this, I have images. So maybe within this main, I have a series of images. So I will just, I'll use Photoshop to tell me the width and height. So maybe these images in here are, let's say, .275 by 152. So that's the size of each of these. And I'm going to drag these out by hitting Alt and Shift and then dragging. So basically creating duplicates here. And let's see, I will go ahead and name these as well. So I'll call this one image 1. This is image 2. And this is image. So now I have my layout. So now I can start to look at this and I can start to figure out more things, like the actual sizes and scales that will be used on my web page. So this is where I like to take the actual wireframe to the next level. If you go online, a lot of the wireframes that you see will look like this, and they'll stop at this point. Like this will be the extent to which the wireframe is created. But I want to take it even further. So what I will do is I will start to think about other things besides what I'm naming each section. I'll think about, okay, what are the sizes that I want to use? Maybe what are the colors that I want to use for this? So let's say I can look at my side. I'll start from the top. I can look at my nav bar. In Photoshop, I have the layers set up. So one of the things I might want to do is actually connect and group things that belong together. So, let's see. So rectangle 1 is my nav bar, and actually it's my header. So I'm going to call this header. And I'm going to find my header, and I'm just going to drag it down. Keep that together. Select them both layers. I'm going to shift click, and then I'm going to group them. So Control G. This is my header. And then what I can do now is I can go to that header, and I can go under, let's see. So I can look, clicking on that header, and I can see that header is 12,066 pixels by 116 pixels. So I will add that right here. I will say this is 1266 by 116. Just have to make it a little bit smaller. And I'll do this for each section of the web page. So my side is right here. I'm just organizing my layers in Photoshop for this. So I got my aside, and that aside is 232 by 399. I have to make the text a little bit smaller in these boxes. So it's 2. It was 232 by 399. And then the main box, let's say here, is 997 by 399. And since I've been using guides, I know that the main box and the header box, or the aside box, are the same size. And then if you add up the width of the aside and the main box and the column that's in between, the margin, let's say here, you should get the length of the header, 1266. So this main box is, I gotta click on it again, 997 by 399. 997 by 399. So that's the size of that box. So you do this for the whole wireframe. You kind of go through and figure out what your sizes are. If it's a responsive site, what you can kind of figure out is percentages. So if you want that header to spread out for the full length of the web page, instead of putting a measurement for the width, you just say 100%. And the same thing with this aside and this main. Once we get into responsive, you would say, well, actually this aside will take up maybe 40% of the page, and then your main would be 60%. So it would add up to 100%. So you start to figure out the math for percentages if you're using, if you're creating a responsive site. But once I have this set now, I can start thinking about my HTML, my CSS a little bit better. Now, with some of these names that I'm using to lay out the page, some of those are going to be used as tags. Let me